Hello. So you're writing, and you can write any character from anywhere, but to be really authentic about where your characters come from, you have to actually know the place. But you also know that isn't going to happen. You know some places, obviously, but for instance, I have a character named Rak who I need to come from Nazareth. Okay, I've never been to Nazareth. Right now, as I record this, the coronavirus means I'm not going to go to Nazareth either. But also, even when there isn't COVID, we're writers. We're not likely to have the budget to just nip off to Israel and spend a year there. No question, going somewhere is best. Not only best, but when you don't go, when you don't know a place, you risk losing those readers or that audience who do know it. But your iPhone and your iPad and your Mac do have tools to help you at least start to learn much more about a place. For example, did you have any idea how confusing the street names are in Nazareth? Now I do. Let's go travelling. Hello, I'm William Gallagher. This is 58 Keys, and as ever, as always, this is about how writers like you and me can get more out of our Macs and our iPhones and our iPads, and actually this time it's all of them. It's all of them because I want you to see a tool that I think you're very familiar with in a certain circumstance, and then also see actually how you can use it for more research purposes. I mean, I'm navigating now, and as I'm sure you do, I'm using Siri and Apple Maps for it, but there is so much more to Maps, Apple Maps or Google Maps, than just turn left in 300 meters or whatever it is. I want to show you some things about these, some writers' tools, but I'm going to start with Apple Maps, and that's chiefly for just personal preference. Google Maps is more powerful, Apple Maps looks better. I think that's the way it works. I find Google's design really infuriating. Actually, quick story. I was using Apple Maps to get me to a place where I was running a writing workshop, and it let me down. It took me to the wrong place completely, and that was somewhat disappointing. So I got out Google Maps, put it in the same place, and just skip to the end of the story. Google didn't take me to the right place either. I think now I was actually running a writing workshop in Brigadoon, but at the time, Apple Maps disappointing, yeah, but Google Maps was just enraging, because I'm looking at this thing and it's got all this map on it, and I cannot figure out where the button is to press to say, right, yes, go. That's typical of Google. The features are there, but they're hidden, and it does. Why do we have to figure this stuff out? Why can't we just have a button marked button? I'm breathing deeply now. Okay, calming down. Once you get past that, when you know where things are, Google is great. But let's do Apple Maps, as there's a couple of new things in there, or at least developments of new things in there that have come along recently that I think are really interesting. And actually, I need to turn back this way. Excuse me a second. Let's start with flyover. Oh, love this. As ever with anything I'm going to tell you about Apple Maps, the problem is it's only in a few places. The maps are everywhere, but details like this that help us research stuff, things like that, very limited. Rolling out more and more, but a bit limited. Pick a city, okay? Because at the moment this is really only for cities. Pick a city in the world, a major city. Hint, America would be your best chance at the moment. Well, no, actually, I'm in Birmingham in the UK. Let's try Birmingham. Okay, now there's Birmingham where I live. There's a nice little, I don't know what you call this, a description card, a label. Label's too small. Notice the extra detail you get in there, information about the place. Nice little research purposes, but also there's that flyover button. So click on the flyover button and enjoy this. I see this as a way of familiarising myself with a new area that my characters might live in. Frankly, I also see it as gigantic fun. I utterly love. I've done all the flyovers I can find because I just enjoy it. You get to get a sense of the area, of where things are next to each other, how far apart they are, and it surfaces some of the, I suppose, really the touristy bits, but at least, give you some familiarity to start your researching into more details. But it's just fun. It's just fun. Okay, Carbondale's very close. Similar thing to flyover, a bit more detail, dig in a bit more. Apple Maps in, again, more areas, but still, God, I envy him. More areas, but not everywhere. They have a thing called Look Around. You know what this is? It's a knockoff of Google Street View, really. But again, actually, I prefer it. Where it's available, Apple's Look Around is really nice. Good photography of the area, so you can get sometimes, when I look at it on my Mac, on a large monitor, it feels to me like I'm walking around the area, or my characters are walking around with me, and I really like that. But also then, when you want to move around, look around, move around, when you want to use Look Around to move around, click and hold, and this is what happens. You zoom off up the street as if you are driving there. Yeah, oddly, I don't know if I'm doing something wrong. I'm trying to show this to you, because when I've used it before, and when Apple announced it, it looked like you press and hold and you just zoom and you keep on zooming. Now it seems to just go so far as stop for a breath or something. It moves further than Google Street View does when you click through that, and also it's actually moving. You feel motion. With Google, you know what it's like. There's a huge truck here in front of me. Okay. With Google Street View, you know what it's like. You find a bit and there's a huge arrow and you click on it and you move forward. It kind of shimmies forward a bit, and then you shimmy forward a little bit. Oh, you've gone too far, turn around, shimmy back. Look Around is just smoother, and I wish it was everywhere. It's getting there, so that'd be good. Good when it comes to everywhere. For now, brilliant where it is. To find out where it is, again, search for a city, and when you see this binoculars icon, click on that, away, off you pop. Good, moving at last. One last thing about Apple Maps. I mentioned that I have this character called Rak, who lives in Nazareth. She actually lives there in 2162 or something like that. So I figure any research I get wrong, I can just say to people, just wait, you wait. Yeah? Anyway, she lives there, she works there, so she obviously has to live somewhere. She obviously has to work somewhere. I'm really confused by this traffic system. That's quite scary, in fact, but there we go. Hi. She lives somewhere, she works somewhere. I can look around and think of, well, I know my character, what sort of things does she likely do, where therefore is she likely to work, and based on where she works, what she does, you can figure out incomes and all this stuff. You can kind of start making edge guesses about where she lives. And so now you've got a sense that you've come to totally the wrong place. Seriously. No idea where I just went there. Were you distracting me again? You get a sense of where somebody can be. So I start. I don't know, was it quite as formal as this sounds, but I'll start thinking that they're going from here to there. How long is it going to take them to get to work? It's going to be light or dark when they get there. Just get a feel for their lives sometimes. And the thing about Apple Maps is that I can decide, right, this is where she works. So this is where she might get lunch most days, and I can work out 5, 10, 20 things about places she would know. So Rak's regular haunts, I could call. Now I need 3 R's, don't I? Rak's regular, character name Rak, regular, that'll do, routes, Rak's regular routes. I can make what's called a guide, called RACs, regular routes, and just add to it anywhere I need her to know or to go. And then having done that, later on, when she's come back home to Nazareth from wherever I've put her, I click on the map thing and I get a snapshot of the whole area with pins for all of those places. So I get a kind of sense of the geography and also the sort of temporal layout of how near and far things are. And I just said I can do that. This collections thing, it's actually meant to be for when you're a tourist, you go into a place, you mark all the areas in New York City that you want to visit. And then you can share the whole lot with anybody else you might be traveling with. But you can do the same thing as a writer. You can send that to your co-author. If you ever hire researchers, you can get them to do it and send it to you. Collections is just a really neat way of leveraging the power of Apple Maps. Right, now that's Apple Maps. Google Maps. Oh. Now, I don't want to go on about design again, but have a look at this, please. So that is Google Maps on an iPhone. I would like, please, to use this famous Street View and look around this area. Off you pop. Where do I do that? Where's the button for that, please? There isn't a button. There's no Street View button, there's no Street View menu, no Street View option, no mention in a help of how to use Street View. It's obvious that you have to drop a pin and start from there. Of course it is. And it's obviously obvious how you drop a pin. Press and hold, anywhere on the map, plop, there it goes. And now you're into Street View, and now you can look anywhere. I find that tedious, but once you know, it's okay. Once you get in, again, it's not as smooth as Apple Maps. Look around. Photography is rarely as good, but Google Maps kills Apple Maps for how you can use Street View everywhere. It's really incredible, isn't it, that all that exists? Okay, now you know that. You've seen Street View, and you know that you can navigate using Google Maps. This is what's worth going a little deeper into it for. Everything I just said applies on the iPhone and the iPad, but if you're on a Mac, you can download Google Earth Pro. It's also on Windows and Linux, but it's not on iOS. Google Earth Pro, it's very clunky. I think it looks like a GIS, a geographical information system that I might have used in the 1990s or something. It is a GIS system. But the thing with GIS is that it's the information part that's key. Yes, you get a map. Everybody gets a map on any GIS system, but then beyond that, upon that map are projected other things. Maybe you are a local authority or something, and you need to know where all the roadworks are this week. Maybe you're a teacher who needs to know where all the schools are and things. A geographical information system can have all of that available to you. It tends to be that you buy the free version for us is limited in what it gives us, what are these layers, but the fact that they are layers is what's really useful. You can strip away things to see the detail you want, to really get a feel for what is where. And then there's this layer. It's historic. I can't get over the fact this exists even. A historical image layer. Now, Google Earth Pro on the Mac. Go anywhere in the world. Oops. And then go back in time there. So what you see when you go to anywhere in Google Earth is as it is now, or very nearly now, whenever the last satellite imagery was. But through the historical thing, you can go back to what the satellite imagery was last year, the year before. Now, you can't go back very far. Let me show you New York City. Okay, my favorite place in the world, as it happens, as I seem to keep saying. You can't go back, very far. You can't go back to when Manhattan was Manhattan, the island of many hills. You can't go back that far, obviously, but you can go back surprisingly far. I picked New York because New York can take you back to the 1970s on Google Earth. You can always pretty much go back a couple of years, but here it's quite a long way, isn't it? It's back to the 70s for it, so you can track how things change. Now, a lot of the last few years will be Google Earth and Google Maps of the last few years, so very detailed, high quality images. And that's because Google's been doing this for a long time, but it hasn't been doing it since the 70s. So at some point, as you're going back in some way, it changes to relying on satellite imagery sourced from whoever was doing satellite imagery back in the day. And the upshot for us as writers is that the coverage is patchy, there will be years where there's nothing, and also that the quality changes quite a lot. So you're not going to get highly detailed maps for every day back to the 1970s anywhere. But you do get things that are very useful. Like, sorry about this. Here's New York and 9/11, or nearabouts. So, I honestly think this is a deep way of seeing how an area changes. Remember, your characters lived through what's going through this. You now know things probably they don't, because we never notice things as they change around, because change is usually very slow and piecemeal, but you've got a sense of what's been going on forward. And the depth it can give to your characters, I don't think can be overstated, except I think I'm probably reaching a bit here. This is just too much fun, really. That's the thing. If you ever just want an afternoon away from writing, fire up Google Earth Pro on your Mac and have a brilliant time. This is one of those things that it goes without saying, and yet it's so important that you have to say it anyway. Using Apple Maps and Google Maps is nowhere nearly as good as going to a place for research, but it's vastly better than not using them, isn't it? Plus, it's easier to spend another minute or hour or afternoon using these tools than it ever is to write. So, there's a bonus for you. Here's another bonus. Everything you've just seen is it's like a live tool. I mean, even with the historical imagery in Google Earth Pro, you can move around to see where things are on the map to where they were on the map. The internet has much more. Countless more sites that include maps, and some of those sites, well, they have actually counted their maps. The one I found, British Library, says their collection has 4.5 million historical maps, and at least a gigantic amount of which are online. The US Library of Congress, massive collection as well. And what I love about maps like theirs, maps that aren't live tools like Google Maps or Apple Maps, is that every one of them really tells you about the people who made them, the characters, what they chose to include on a map, what they decided to leave out, what they call places, what the purpose of them doing a map is. I mean, on the boring side, maybe it's somebody in government administration. On the scarier side, invasion. And we can use all of this research to find our characters, but there are also stories. There are so many stories in maps. How about Sandy Island? Completely fictitious, never existed island off the coast of Australia, popped on maps hundreds of years ago by mistake, and yet you could still find it on Google Maps. Really, I hope they fixed that by now, but it was there at least up to a couple of years ago, at least a little indication of it. Here in the UK, there was a village that you can see on the maps, moved. A train station was built just outside the village. I don't know why it didn't go all the way, but what must have happened is that new buildings were constructed around the station and the ones furthest away fell into disuse. But the result is, when those were demolished, the village was here, it moved about a mile to here. I'm riveted by stuff like that. I was particularly riveted by that idea, and I forgot to make a note of where it was. Maybe that's really the only useful thing I've got to tell you today. Make better notes. That's it for 58 Keys this time. Thank you very much for watching. Take care of yourself, and I'll see you soon. And now the truth is, I am incredibly lost, which does seem a bit ironic given the topic of this. I'm going to have to pull over and actually use maps.